The new Halo show is a big topic of discussion and contention right now, so I'd like to discuss one of my favourite details from the Halo franchise that is limited to specific mediums by its very nature. In the early Halo novels, the Spartan 2s all wore identical Mark V Mjölnir armour. This detail was kept into even a few novels taking place after the first game. But despite this, Dr. Halsey can readily identify any Spartan in full armour simply by observing minute subtleties in how they carried themselves, showing just how intimately Halsey knows her kids. This also plays into the concept that Spartans are never designated as KIA, only MIA, to maintain the myth that Spartans cannot be killed to preserve hope. Obviously, this is easier to do when no one can tell when one is replaced. However, most subsequent appearances by 2s, such as Halo Legends, Reach and 5, even those taking place prior to or during these early stories, or adaptations of said stories, disregard this detail and instead depict each 2 in unique armour, or at least with their number designation on their chest. The reason for this is simple but interesting. In a novel, you can write a scene with 5 characters in identical attire, totally indistinguishable physically, and still allow the audience to follow by stating who does what. Fred does this, Linda does that. In visual media, however, that isn't an option. In a comic, for example, you don't even have voices to distinguish between them, making it impossible without text boxes. It's easier when you do have voices in a game or a show, but the audience still needs to be able to identify these voices and associate them with each character. But if they're all performing non-unique actions and not saying anything, or speaking but not moving around with the energy of a Power Ranger, unless they have obvious visual tells like a limp or a unique pose, you'd only be able to tell them apart by weapons, like how Linda is the blue team sniper and Kelly typically has a shotgun. Thus, to make things easier for the audience, you pretty much have to give them unique design elements to distinguish them readily. I think Halo Legends was the introduction of both numbers on the chests, which have now made it to the Master Chief in Halo Infinite, and unique armors. I personally prefer just the numbers, since you can mostly maintain the Halsey detail by making it that she can still tell from their silhouettes or from an angle where she can't see the full number, and let the unique armors be a thing for 3s and 4s to distinguish them from the 2s. But, of course, that severely limits how you can film the characters, because you always need to have their number or weapon in frame, and that can be a serious detriment to the visual storytelling options. Plus, each character can have their own visual identity with unique armor, as long as it's not horribly over-designed like in Halo 5. Also, on a somewhat related note, why does every adaptation of Dr. Halsey make her blonde when pretty much the first thing we learned about her in her debut in Fall of Reach was that her hair is black? Are they trying to make the woman who abducts children more fuckable? And no, I haven't seen the new show, nor do I want to. They wanted more black characters, so they racelifted Jacob and Miranda Keyes, but left out Avery Jr. Johnson, the single greatest character in the Halo franchise. Danny Sapani even looks like Johnson in the show. How can you possibly be so incompetent or uncaring about the source material that you make a Halo show where Sergeant Johnson has less screen time than either the Master Chief's face or his arse? If you liked this video, why not subscribe and support me on Patreon like these fine people here? If not, then make sure to share it with your enemies so they can suffer along with you. Today's recommended video is The Art of Acting with No Face and Halo's Failure by Godzilla Mendoza. The video addresses a particular issue with the Halo show that is not entirely an adaptation problem, but it partially is, and it highlights how, in 2022, there is no longer an excuse for that. Today's recommended video is The Art of Voice Acting with No Face. Ooh, that'd be weird.